Hello, everyone. I'm Taj, joined by Isaac and Sand, and we'll be exploring some of the most influential handheld consoles and their games that have been influential in our lives and the industry in general. So let's jump right in.
All right, starting with the Nintendo Game Boy, released in 1989, it was one of the most influential consoles to have graced the market and the gaming sphere in general. Its introduction popularized the culture for the most part, introducing to us a truly, something revolutionary. One of its main selling points was the fact that the games were simple enough to understand for most audiences, given that it only had a D-pad, two buttons, and then a little start and select button at the bottom. Another one of its great selling points is the amount of playtime that it could have, only running on four AA batteries. 15 hours is a lot, especially for a road trip where you're not going to have access to any other source of entertainment. So they actually did think about that. They wanted the Game Boy to be as easy to play on the go as possible. Going back to the point about car rides, the kid wants to listen to sound, right? The adults probably don't want to be hearing Tetris for 8 hours while they're driving. So they gave the console a headphone jack. That way, everyone's happy. Moving on to the games it actually had. This is where it gets good. This is where the Game Boy really shone, was with its selection. Starting with Kirby Tilt and Tumble, this one's incredibly unique because it has hardware built into the cartridge itself with an accelerometer. So what this essentially did was provide the game with motion controls. The gameplay consisted of tilting your Game Boy around and moving Kirby around, sort of as if you had a ball on a paper plate and you had to balance it that way to traverse levels, collect stars, etc. And and that was really unique. And in fact, even by today's gaming standards, everyone still loves Kirby Tilt and Tumble for the creativity that it brought in its interesting gimmick. Speaking of interesting gimmicks, Tetris. Where do we even start here? You've played it, your mom, your dad, your dog, your aunt, your uncle have played Tetris, and that's for a great reason. The Game Boy was probably the console that ended up popularizing this the most because it came with the system. You got a copy of Tetris for whenever you purchased the Game Boy. So everybody had this. It's simple premise with just, trying to create a straight line with these different shapes made for, a gameplay experience that all audiences could enjoy. And that is absolutely beautiful. Moving on to the Nintendo DS now, where I will have Tazzy explain what it's all about.
Hi. So the Nintendo DS was released in 2004. It is still one of the most bought handheld consoles of all time. Even the 3DS, its predecessor, did not pass it. Most things haven't passed it. It had a stylus and two screens. It could also run the Game Boy games that we were just talking about earlier. It was one of the biggest things. It had four iterations and it was just great. I remember growing up with it. I lived on this console. I had all of the versions. I can attest to the cultural phenomenon, which was the Nintendo DS. And we're going to start talking about some of its games right now.
Well spoken. Yeah, if you were on the playground and you didn't have a DS, you were the weird kid. So, speaking of weird, wowee, what have I got for you today? Okay, so this isn't more of a entertainment game more than it is a quote unquote edutainment game. But Brain Age was one of the games that ended up popularizing this. And so, yeah, I know something stands out here. This big floating head. This isn't just any floating head. This is Dr. Ryuta Kawashima, who is a certified neuroscientist that actually worked together with Nintendo to create this game. What the gameplay consisted of, whether it be puzzles by numbers, Sudoku included, that's pretty cool. Fast little challenges, just anything to stimulate those brain muscles, And it actually has in fact gone on the record for helping stave off memory loss. There was an article that took place a couple years ago where a woman was gifted a DS for her birthday, and she's elderly. She reports that by playing the DS like each and every day, that she believes that it has actually helped her, ward off problems that come with old age, like memory loss, dementia, Alzheimer's, etc., because she's keeping her brain active with games like Brain Age. And I think that's really, really cool. Speaking of really, really cool, Rhythm Heaven. I absolutely love this game, not only because it's unique with how the DS comes into play with it, but I'm actually going to show you right now, visually, in a bit further detail, why I love this so much.
Hi, it's me. It's Isaac. I'm not just a disembodied voice, and I have something really cool to show you. All right, so this right here is the DS that my sister gave to me this Christmas, right? It's an XL model, it's just a little bit bigger. It has a little camera. Those are the only differences between this and the original DS. What I wanted to show off, right, is we were talking about Rhythm Heaven, right? Lo and behold, I have a copy of Rhythm Heaven on this thing right now, and I was saying before with Brain Age as well, right? Where I was saying, it uses the DS's capabilities in a bunch of different ways. I didn't specify that for a reason, right? Because this is really cool, okay? Normally, you would play it like this, right? Just top to bottom. But this looks wrong, and that's for a reason, right? Because you're supposed to hold it like this, like it's a book. Hold on, I'm gonna let this focus for a second. Look at that. Now that looks a little better. I know the text is reversed, but you get the picture. And yeah, you would play it like a book. For Brain Age, you would hold it the exact same way. You would have little Kawashima's head on the side here yapping to you while you do your little brain games. And that was just one of the many ways that the DS got creative with how it made its games function. But yeah, just wanted to drop by and show off a little bit of what I had here. I thought a visual presentation would be pretty cool considering I have it on me right here. Yeah, that's about it. Bye-bye.
The PSP, which is also known as PSP 1000, was announced on October 27, 2004 in Tokyo. It was first launched in Japan on December 12, 2004, and in the USA on March 23, 2005. In Japan, it was sold for 20,000 yen, and in the USA, it was sold for $250. The day of the launch, they had sold approximately 172,000 units. In the USA alone, Sony reported to have sold 600,000 units in the first week, generating $150 million in revenue. The PSP had PlayStation 2 graphics, which was crazy because it was impossible to imagine a handheld having the capabilities of a console. It had rich stereo sound, which was designed to deliver immersive audio to on go. The battery lasted about 4 to 6 hours of playtime. The PSP had a 4.3-inch LCD screen. It was known to be the largest handheld screen of the time. Now we come to Metal Gear Acid, which was released on December 16, 2004 in Japan, later on March 23, 2005 in the USA. If you look at the picture of Metal Gear Acid, it looks like some kind of game that is just like COD or Warzone, where you can move your character using a joystick and shoot enemies and such. But no. See, this game was also a deck building game where you had to choose a deck every time you wanted your character to do something, like move, stay hidden, switch guns, and shoot as well. You had to think and select each move carefully to succeed in this game. Picture this. The PSP just dropped. Cool as hell. Sony wanted to do something about it. Here comes Lamina's Puzzle Fusion. It was also released around the same time as the Metal Gear Acid, first in Japan and then later on USA. It wasn't just a puzzle game. This thing had a full-on audiovisual as well. Think of it as Tetris plus cool music that goes along with each time you place the block. Alright, now that you know about the first PSP that came out in 2004, it's time to see what they're doing now. Welcome to the PS Portal. This was basically a way to make your PS5 console games to go. The PS Portal was released on November 15, 2023. It was sold for $199. Let's talk about some technological advancements from PSP to PS Portal. It had an 8-inch LCD screen that runs 1080p with 60 frames per second. And then there's the controller. The dual sense wireless controller with all the features like adaptive triggers and haptic feedback. It had cloud gaming streams, which meant you didn't need to have hard physical copy of the game. Let's talk about some games that I have loved playing on the PS Portal. Enter the Dragon? No. Enter the Astrobot, released on September 6, 2024. This game was exclusively for PlayStation user. This game is 3D platform through and through. Think about it like Mario Galaxy. You're jumping over 80 levels across 6 different worlds, and every theme felt like a love letter to PlayStation's past and future. Now, last but not the least, The Last of Us Part 2, which was originally released on June 19, 2020, and later remastered and released on January 19, 2024. This game is heavy on stealth, survival, and emotional gut punches. The world is wrecked by a virus which infected everything, and for human, it's worse. Nothing, not trying to spoil this, but this is a story about revenge, violence, and the cost of your choice. This game makes you uncomfortable on purpose.
Hope you've enjoyed the journey through our favorite handheld consoles and their games. They've been very influential both in our lives and in general. I hope that they will continue to inspire future handheld consoles to their standards.